minor. And this is now a personal letter, but it's showing the social norms that's happening. Because he says Liberians sin most egregiously and such a preoccupation. I'm reading from the next slide, Anthony. With public display was the evidence of small minds. He says, so what he's doing is he's telling his friend who's coming, he said, in your selection of ladies wear, do get some ladies to assist you to make choices. For the ladies here are very flashy and wear no mean dresses. So again, he was talking about how the, the, the people in Liberia, how they dress very flashy. And then we see that Edward Wilmot Blyden also, he visited Brewerville, right? And Brewerville was named after Charles Brewer of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, who gave a lot of money to the Pennsylvania Colonization Society. From Blyden's letter, we see that in Brewerville, but in 1873, there were 14 settlers there, and from Pennsylvania, and 44 from North Carolina, right? So Blyden is saying, I was on the whole well pleased with the energy and thrift of the people of this settlement. The swamps near the towns were filled up sufficiently to make roads and bridges all done by themselves. And the reason why you see, I say, read telephone, I want to read something to you that he says about Bassa. So the guy was writing about Bassa, Elias Jones now, not Blyden. So Elias Jones was the one who, if you remember, he died. Sorry, I think my thing. Yeah, he drowned. So here is Elias Jones's letter. He says, I went to Bassa Cove, Bassa, right? Bassa country stands equal to any that I have ever seen. He says the soil is immensely rich, well watered and timbered. The country is hilly at first. The soil has the appearance of a mixture of the black mold of clay and crushed stone. It is a common thing among the farming Liberians to have on their farm sugarcane, right? And then he talks about it, and he says that Bassa had some of the best soil. He said, I have seen growing, yeah, coffee, sugarcane, arrowroot, ginger, cotton, guinea corn, sweet potatoes, cassava, lime, oranges, plantain, soursop, mango plums, pawpaw, lemons, watermelons, coconut, tamarind, sweet sap, pomegranate, the okra, the banana, the African cherry, the African peach, the sorrel, the granadilla, the rose apple. I have I have not seen rice. Rice is no rightly cultivated, neither is the cotton, and therefore it does not grow as luxuriant as it does in the Carolinas. So now we see that okay, the soil is rich. Bassa, he says that Bassa can grow anything, and he gives you a list of the things that is growing in Bassa Cove. But he says something very important, right? He says they don't grow rice and they don't grow cotton. So I'm thinking, and this is just my belief, I'm thinking that, I'm saying that had I been a free slave and I had gone to Liberia, why would I want to do cotton? If I had done cotton and rice in the Carolinas or wherever I was enslaved, why would I want to do cotton again? So I think that we see in the letters that you can get an idea of this new land. You can get an idea of people that were in this land. You can get an idea of how the freed people, when they came, they really created where they were coming from. They created, they had Freemasons, they had literary societies, they had, and I will read some of the letters that went back, encouraging people to come. So, for example, he talked about, they talk about, this woman is writing to her friend in 1839, and she says, this is a delightful place indeed. There is no doubt that anyone who is disposed to work at all can get a living in this place called Millsburg. There is as much land as you choose to take up. and you may plant what you choose. You can go anywhere you please in the woods. No one could be otherwise than satisfied here, if they are disposed to be satisfied at all. Any kind of seed you plant will grow. And as for corn and such things, I have never seen a better place for raising them. So the free people, so most of them were farmers, and when they came, they couldn't believe the richness of the soil. But also, you can see that as they were settling, they were also going into status, into classes. So you have Martha Ricks, and the letter says Martha Ricks of Liberia visited Queen Victoria in 1892 and was received by Her Majesty at Windsor, addressed to Her Majesty a few months ago a letter of congratulations on the occurrence of the 60th year of her reign, and had received a prompt and most gracious reply from Her Majesty. Mrs. Ricks is in her 81st year. So we're reading all of these things and we're saying, oh, so we see that the making of the republic, as we call it, was a mixture of people who were farmers, people who were seamstresses, people who were bricklayers, people who work with their hands, just like on the slave plantations, they came with their trade. Now there was a lady named Anna Wilkins, and she was complaining to her friend about some of the problems she was having with the indigenous people, and she said, "We have experienced the same difficulties here with all missions among barbarous people, right? When the girls we have taken become marriageable ages, their parents claim them and sell them for wives, and they bring a better price because of the improvement of their manners in our school." And then she goes on to say, "I have and then her sister, Jean, says, "I have a boy and a girl in my family. They are native, and I am training them to be white," she says. "They think they'll be white when they learn to read. And I am teaching them to work on the sewing machine. It would amuse you to see the little boy at the sewing machine working away, and the natives coming to look at this strange thing. The people of the native town, seeing the change in their children, want their children to know book." So she's writing to her friend and telling her friend all of the things that are happening in the place. So we see from these personal letters that we get the idea that the women, the settler women, were more involved in training the young boys and girls as they claim to be white or to be educated. Let me put it that way. The men were working in agriculture, they were working in business, and they were working in construction. So we see all of these from the letters. So if we look at the next slide, we see that the next slide, which is, I think, perhaps one of the most famous pieces that comes out of the letters, and is from Talbot Major to Benjamin Major, right, in 1848. And he says, "We did on the 29th July last, by own representatives, solemnly declare ourselves a free, sovereign, and independent people, thereby dissolving all political connection between the colonization society and ourselves. And we have established a new form of government by a republican form. And it is my pride and joy that I am a free man in a free country and can enjoy the free, mild, and equal government which has just been established, and where I can have an equal share of republicanism." So we see, he said 29 July last. So we know it was 1 year. 1 year, and he was talking about 1847, but he's writing this letter 1848. So the letter is very long, but in the letter, he's explaining to Benjamin Major that Liberia is now a free country, and he is happy to be part of this country, that he will be, what he said, it is like a republican form of government, and he's very proud to be a Liberian. So we see that the letters started from, "May I go to Liberia? I don't want to go to Liberia. If I go to Liberia and things are not okay, can I return to the United States? Then you see the letters change to one of, I'm going to this place. I don't know what I will see there, but I will be free. So I will go, And then the letters, if you start to read some of these letters, there's a book called Slaves No More. And in that book, they have a lot of the letters. And you will see that some of the people would write back and say, don't come here. Things are very difficult. Other people will write and say, please come. This is a place where if you can work, you can make it. And then the letters would change after people settled. Letters started to change. People just started to write like how you would write back home. Oh, my son got sick. My wife died. My husband died. Things like that. They had become accommodated in their land. They knew that they were Liberians. So the letters changed. So you see how it changed. And then after this independence, most of the letters that went back were just letters of trying to make it, not letters of returning, letters trying to make it in this country that they now call home. So the letters changed a lot after that. Any questions so far? Any comments? Um, oh, how did rice become a staple? Well, I don't know, because if you look at it, when this guy was when Elias was talking about Bassa, he named all of the things that they grew, but he did not say that rice was not there. He said that it was not as cultivated as the other fruits and vegetables and staples that they were doing. Cotton, he said, cotton and rice were not cultivated like the other ones. That's what he said. Yeah. Oh, Kalakpa, he said, I'm watching live from Lopa County, Source District. Welcome, welcome. Yeah, so we are getting there gradually. Agriculture is the way to go in building of our country, Liberia. Our country, Liberia, need every one of us. There is no more blame game here. Everyone have the responsibility and role to play in building of our country, Liberia. Thank you so much. I cannot agree more. We always say that together we can make Mama Liberia a great place for all Liberians. Thank you so much. And we always say that. We say that if you're talking about commonality, the one common thread that comes through everybody in Liberia is one of migration for something better. Whether you are a freed person coming from the United States, whether you are a recaptured a slave coming from the Congo, whether you are from the disintegration of the kingdoms and moving towards to Liberia to settle, we all came from somewhere. So migration is the one common thread that binds us together. And so, of course, we all work together to make Liberia a great place. The lots of land in your letter, madam, refers to seized land, right? Samuel Austin Field, I would assume so. If you read a lot of these letters, that's what they're saying. In fact, the land was like a carrot. Most of the letters that went back would say to the people, when you come here, there's land for the taking. You can take land. So I'm not saying that the letters, that the people in the letters did not take land. I'm saying that what they were saying was that, come join us. We have land. So yes, you can call it seized land, but I'm just reading the letter that was sent to their friends to encourage them to come to Liberia. Okay, so we move on. So now you will see that a lot of the letters, I mean, there's so many people wrote a lot, people wrote about everything. I mean, some of them are very heartbreaking, when they talk about how, like Mrs. Irons. Mrs. Irons said, well, I never did like Africa, but I have no fault to find with it. It's a good enough place to live, and I'm going back as soon as I get tired of staying here. So Mrs. Irons, a book with a lot of letters, Mrs. Irons was like, hey, I'll be here. I have no problem with it, but if I get tired with Liberia, I'll go home. Because to her, Liberia wasn't home. It would be interesting to see if she remained. But like I said, the letters evolved. Just how the people evolved over time, you see that the letters evolved until at the end, it's just mostly about things that happen there. So we and it will be a very interesting study to trace the letters, the people, and to move from there and see how we come to the newer letters, and the newer letters we're talking about, and how could the staple be a Republican form and free when the real owners of the land were not citizens and therefore could not vote. Okay, Samuel, I know what you say. As a student of history, we know that. We know that the indigenous people did not get the right to vote until 100 years after independence. We know that. We know that they because land ownership came with citizenship, or citizenship came with land ownership. And since the indigenous people were not citizens, they therefore could not own land in a Western way of owning land. We know that. So yes, we are saying that, yeah, you say they seize the land is fine, but as the guy says, our friend who's watching from Liberia, we are all one people. We have to work towards building the country. So with the seizure of land, I am not an expert on that. Of course, it's assumed, that, but what I'm saying is that these letters were just simply written by people to encourage other people. And they did put there, one of the things that they encouraged them was that come and get land. And as I said, some of them returned. Not everybody who came to Liberia stayed in Liberia. There are a lot of letters where you see when a woman's husband dies, she goes back to the United States. Or when her children dies, she goes back to the United States, or the man goes back to the United States. So it was just, influx. Migration, was influx from there to here, from here to there. And some of them also went to Sierra Leone, don't forget. So people travel a lot. So, okay, so if we're looking at those letters, and we will go more in depth in those letters as time goes on, but I wanted to we're thinking about pivotal letters that kind of like define the country, right? And so the next letter we want to talk about is the letter of Albert Port. So I know it's a big leap. I know that, but what we're doing is just trying to talk about letters that we think people want to know about. What did it say, right? But before we get to Albert Port, I just wanted to say, reading the letters of President William V.S. Tubman, it's a whole different ball game. It's like reading the letters. You can't put it down. You learn so much from those letters. But let's go to Albert Port's letter to Tubman's reply, and then we'll come back to Tubman's letters. So the first letter, that Albert Port, I call him like one of the last few men in I guess the only man in Liberia really that had courage at the time. So Albert Port, he wrote Tubman a letter, and the reason he wrote that letter was, if you remember, Tubman was going to buy a yacht, and Tubman was ready to buy the yacht, and so Albert Port disagreed with Tubman. So here is Albert Port's letter, right? I took some out because it's a very long letter. So Albert Port is writing Tubman. He says, ever since I read a copy of the listener in which you published your message to the legislature convoking the special session, I have been thinking and trying not to think and feel urged to let you know some of the thoughts that have been passing through my mind. Liberia is classified among the undeveloped countries of the world. She lacks some of the basic minimum requirements and needs much more than she can muster at the present time. And although this is so, we are undertaking to spend $150,000 for the purchase of a yacht for the use of the president. In addition to this, it will require a tidy sum for its upkeep. It is my humble opinion that the present stage of the country's development, this amount could be more profitably used towards the development with more permanent results. Yes, other countries have these things, and in time, as our country is developed, we too will have some of them. But I think we should concentrate upon fundamentals. Unfortunately, the citizens of this country do not feel free to express themselves upon vital questions affecting them, but sit by and grumble the people don't mean anything. I am afraid that even in the legislature, there is a great reluctance, if not the absence, of the free expression of thoughts and opinions, especially where the president is concerned. This only brings to face with great responsibility weighing so heavily upon the president, which could be lightened if the people felt free to express themselves and their views were taken in the right spirit. Uh-oh. So Aberport says, you're going to buy a yacht. Liberia is an underdeveloped country, or we call it now a developing country. You're spending $150,000. The people in the legislature would tell you that if they were not afraid of you, but they are afraid of you. You know, so I've thought well, long, and hard, and I've decided that I will be the one to tell you that you cannot spend that much money on a yacht when Liberia is poor. In time, of course, in time, we will be able to afford that, but this is not the time, right? I call this one of the pivotal letters in Liberia because of the courage it took. This is a man who's saying even the legislature is afraid of the president. And you have a man, Albert Port, a teacher, writing the president to say, please don't spend money on this. You know, so it's very interesting, this letter that Albert Port wrote to President Tutman. You know, and of course, he said that if they were not so afraid of you, they would tell you that this expenditure that you're trying to do is wrong. But they're afraid of you, so they wouldn't tell you. So let me tell you that you should not spend this money, right? So the next one is what? President Tutman's response to Aberport, right? So President Tutman writes Aberport, and he says to Aberport, so what he tries to explain to Aberport how it came about, that he didn't just decide to buy a yacht. No, that was a guy, Mr. Bogdan. He was a ship captain, right? And so Mr. Bogdan had asked the president. He says, "But are you telling me that every time you want to travel, you use a foreign vessel?" And the president said, "Yes." He said, do you mean to tell me that your government has no means by which she can get members of the legislature and the Supreme Court to the seats of the legislature and the Supreme Court, except they are transported there by our ships or some foreign ships?" And Tutman said, "Yes." So he explained to Aberport, this is what happened. This is why we bought the ship. But then he says, on the other hand, so the president himself can be petty. He said, on the other hand, you and the rest of the grumblers make no contribution or make so little contribution to the resources of the country that you should be ashamed to talk about public expenditure. How much taxes have you or any of the grumblers paid into the public treasury from 1944? And when I took office and met the net revenues at $1 million to the present, how much taxes of any kind or financial contribution have you or the grumblers put into the revenue to cause this increase? Have you or any of you contributed towards the income tax, the ticket tax, the injury tax, the sales tax, or the profit tax? Have you paid your real estate taxes? If so, in what amount? It might interest you to know that I pay income tax of more than $2,000 for the year alone. So he didn't end there. He goes and says Firestone paid nearly $3 million income tax. Uh-oh, that's a bit of history coming there. The people who pay taxes in the country and will be entitled to interpose objections are those up country, the foreigners, and few of your elements who really do pay taxes, right? He said, now you just sit down and forget that it is you and begin to think, what financial contribution do you or have you made to your country, right? He says that Aberport is his period article. He's like an anarchist. I remember during the last administration, you were critical and censorious of it. When it comes to present administration, you are occasionally censorious and critical of it. I have never known you to compliment any administration, but you always look for what you think to be weak spots. I think this is an evil spirit. I will buy the yacht with all regard to the grumbling of you grumblers. The yacht will be used for the recreation of the president from his onerous duties that have been increased by more than 1,000% since 1944. And I may invite you to accompany me on one of my cruises that you might get a benefit of some rest from your onerous duties as a school teacher, which may possibly broaden your vision. So, yes, the president. The president is saying, you cannot tell me what to do. You don't pay taxes. And because you don't pay taxes, I don't have to listen to you. I will buy the yacht, right? And in fact, I'm going to invite you on a yacht. So I call this, if not the most important, one of the most important letters, the one from Albert Port, because it shows that even if you are alone, there is still courage in that individual action. So Albert Port says that the legislature was afraid of the president. A lot of people, they were afraid of the president, but Albert Port was not afraid to let the president know of this. So I think that this is one of the great letters of courage from our time. But wait, so do we have any more questions before I go on to the other letters? Do we have questions, comments? Anybody want to join in? Yep, we're reliving history. When will they ever learn? And it's funny because that's what we said, Anastasia. We said that history, we're looking for patterns. It's like a repeat. You're reading something and you're thinking, wait, did it happen yesterday? And then you look and you find, no, it happened 50 years ago. So we haven't learned. But the interesting thing is I was reading Tubman's letters, and I am so sad to see that the letters, if you can count the amount of people writing letters to beg the president. So the president was almost like a bank, right? They will write Mr. Barrow, who was, I think, the chief of staff of the president. And I will read some of the letters, but not with their names. You don't want to shame anybody. This one said, "Dear Mr. Barrow, I did not want to make this appeal, but I'm forced. This is what happens in a secret society room. Should be kept secret and remain secret. Some of us join societies and do not keep the secrets nor are truthful to one another. The reason why I thought to write to you and reveal this is because you are as I am. I mean, brothers of one society. The object of this writing is the amount of $15. One of your footballers is due me over 6 months, right? So last year, I credited this amount in question from me, right? And so he's asking the chief of staff to step in to get money, $15, money that somebody owes him, right? So of course, he is not going there alone. He's saying to him, can you please get my money from this man? But also, if you look at the letters, they are so, they are so subservient in a way, because they're calling the president, oh, dear father, my dearest father, my only father, and it's almost, I wouldn't say obscene. I would say that it's almost like there is nothing that works in the country. It's only the president that works. So you're asking the president, oh, please help me. Please do this. Please give me money. Please do this, and it's amazing to see that the president, if you see how many people were on the government scholarship, not in Liberia, in boarding schools in England, in boarding schools in the United States, paying college tuition. It is just fascinating, to look at these letters and say that did the president alone take care of all these people? And the answer is yes. They would write. They would say, my school fees is due, my rent is due, my this is due. And it is amazing. So I'm going to read some of the letters. I'm not going to put anybody's name, so we're not going to do that. So one of the letters is it's really interesting. Do we have any comments before I read the letter? And some of them, the handwriting is very, okay. So this one says, thanks for the amount. I wish to acknowledge it. So she said, I wish to acknowledge I wish to acknowledge the amount you've given me. Although little, I can make do with it until you have enough. I sincerely hope that you will be able to send me the other as I know that I need it. I needed my I needed my dear Shad to take care of my children. I shall send you photographs of of my children in some envelopes. I have it here on hand now to send you. So this is the president, writing. I mean, and people are writing him and asking him for. So as Anastasia said, nothing has changed. It's still the same. Now these are personal letters. These are not letters that we want to say, oh, they were so pivotal to the country. But we do know that some of the letters are just letters. But when you read the letters, like for example, he says, "My dear cuz, I know you have been so very busy and have not had the time to remember my request made of you last week, and which I also asked Colonel Stubblefield to remind you about. I'm going up the river tomorrow to Virginia to my farm, and also to Mama's at Clay Ashland, and would appreciate if you would be so kind as to send me the note to permit his people to build my little native bungalow, for which I will pay what they charge, so as not to go anywhere else." So, like Samuel was saying, this person is asking him for some indigenous help, some people who are up country, so they can help build her bungalow. So if you really look at the personal papers of President Tutman, besides the ones that have receipts, you will see that almost 80% of those letters are mainly from relatives, friends, female friends, in coded language, dear daddy, asking for things. So nothing has changed. Everything remains the same because these people, and there will be very, very simple things. One of the letters that is astounding that I wish I could find is somebody writing the president to say, "I have a case in court and the judge wants to meet you. So you can tell the judge your feeling about this case." How is that possible? How is that possible? And this is in Tutmo's personal papers. So this is not made up. This is the person saying to the president, "Oh, can you meet with this judge? Because I want him to know that you're on my side, so he can know that I'm important, so that he can rule the way that you want him to rule." So now that is very interesting. That letter was an eye opener for me. Yeah. So are there any questions, comments? Okay, Samuel says, however, by focusing on the deeds and activities of the ACS and the settlers only, are we not revising the history of the Green Coast, which goes back far before the Portuguese? Samuel, I'm not focusing on the deeds and activities. These were the letters. So today, Prof. Nangme and I decided to just look at some of the letters that came out of Liberia, some of the letters about Liberia, right? So these letters are just to show what was happening among the people there. We know, of course, that things were happening in the indigenous areas as well. We do not have the written form, and we talked about that we had the griots telling the history. But what we're saying is that we are not disputing the fact that things were happening for the indigenous people and the settler people. We're simply saying that since this is literature, we're going to talk about the literary text. And in this case, we're going to talk about these mini essays, these unadulterated letters, these honest things that people were writing to each other. And these are the ones that were written by the settlers. But we are not in any way belittling or undermining what was taking place in the indigenous sector at the time. Yeah, Anastasia had a question, but I didn't see that. So we also had the pros, especially in the interior, who got paid for reporting people who spoke against the president. Oh yes, yes. In fact, there is a letter, and when Prof. Nangbe comes back, I think this week we could go through and highlight some of those letters. We had a lot of people in Elias Jones' letter. I think one of it, he did report that there was a guy, there was a crewman, crewman who used to report, who used to leave the coast, and he would come and he would tell what was happening in the coast, and he would go back. So we know that there were people who were reporting each other and to the president, and not only to the president, but to people who were close to the president. So we know that, and there were some chiefs in the letter. It says that there were some chiefs who also did that. Yeah. So I'm trying to find a letter, but we can see also that agriculture play a great role in it. In one of the letters, and I think we're not supposed to call the name, but uh, the lady, she even wrote President Tutman, and she said that, so she was reporting somebody else, somebody who was not loyal to the president, and then for that she would write the president, and the president never responded. So she wrote back asking the president what she did wrong, that the president did not respond to her. So it was very interesting. Um, but some of the letters, if you have time, you can read some of the letters. The letters are very interesting. I'm not going to read the love letters because I don't think that we should read it. um there were some that did not have any name. um well, there's one that the president apparently wants to meet this woman privately, and the woman says, "Dearest darling, Friday has told me that what you have said, I will make myself available for Sunday, but please tell someone to pick me up who has a car," because apparently she didn't have a car, but she was just telling the president that she was available. So that was interesting. Also, I mean, these letters are really um, not letters that should be kept, but they were kept. Yeah. So, do you guys have any questions, any comments about the letters that we are talking about before we go on? Okay. So, one of the things that we see in Tutman's letters that is very interesting is that it's what George Kier calls the imperial presidency, right? Because every single thing that you could do, whether it was with the judiciary, whether it was with civil society, everything revolved around the president. So the president was the go-to person. So it seemed as um, if you had problems, the president was the one to solve them. So you would not even think that Albert Port would be so brave as to write the president and to say to the president, that I disagree with you, what you're doing about the yacht. Because if you look at it, everything, people were writing the president for every single thing. They were reporting each other. They were telling the president, oh, this person said this about you. So it was a one man monarchy in Liberia at the time. So you see the letters, when we say historical letters and personal letters, the letters, they give evidence of what we are saying, that narratives, written texts, stories that come from one era tells you what's happening at the time. And what we see from President Tutman's personal papers is that President Tutman was the go-to person, right? He said, and listen to this. This is one he wrote to a lady named Alice. He said, "I received your letter and I was happy to hear from you. I cannot write as I would like to because I'm leaving tomorrow morning for an 8-week tour of the hinterland and am crowded with work trying to get all set for my start." He said, "You wrote that you are not working anymore. Is it because you have married, as rumor has it, and your husband has asked you to resign from your work?" And um, he says, "With reference to the history on which you are working, I will be glad for you to complete it against the centenary, which will start next year. Thanks very much for having written to me during my bereavement. I was annoyed with you because of your attitude when here and decided to revenge on you by not replying to your letters for some time. I seem to be overcoming my anger and reverting to normal in relations to you. Since you are not working now, and if you are not married, what are your plans for the future? Right? Believe me now and always, that's Willie. So the president was very involved in whether his friends or not, they were very involved in people's lives. He wanted to know what was happening in their life. He wanted to know things about them. But don't forget, there were a lot of these that were sent to Jimmy Barrow, who was, as I said, his chief of staff. And there were many of them were just, asking for things. And I'm sure he will send it to, yeah. Okay, listen to this one. He said, I got your letter concerning the adjournment cases I'm handling in the interest of your relatives, right? I have filed a motion in these cases, and Sim was heard and disposed of during the last term of the civil law court. His Honor, and he calls the judge's name, and for some reason which I have mentioned to Russell, I decided not to take up any phase of the matter before judge again. I have decided to go into the jury trial during this term. However, your relatives wants to change the counsel. If you want to see me in person, let me know where and when to see you. So these letters are not, some of them actually, I think that there could be cause for overturning some judgment and things like that. But as I said, it just shows you that even though they are not formal historical texts, they tell you what's happening. They tell you that the President Tubman at the time, was the all-powerful president. They tell you that people would not speak up against him. They tell you that Albert Port's letter was really, a courageous act because he spoke up against this excess of buying a yacht. It tells you that the president delighted in paying school fees, doing things, but the president could also cut you off. Some of these letters, he tells you, I'm very annoyed with you. I'm not going to pay your tuition. There's one, the lady is begging him because her rent hasn't been paid in 6 months and they're about to evict her. So, like you say, things haven't changed, but the letters could be a cautionary tale that given the fact that we had an imperial president where everything revolved around this president, is this the way we want to go? No, we do not want someone to say, oh, I have a case in court. Can you call a judge and talk to the judge so a case can go my way? We do not want that. We want an independent judiciary. So what we're saying is that these letters, right? We've moved from the letters of the freed people coming to coming to Liberia. We've talked about what they met there. We can go more in depth in talking about how they battled to stay because life was hard. Life was hard for the indigenous people, but don't forget, the indigenous people had lived there. The indigenous people were well aware of the terrain, of the country, of the rainy season, of the mosquitoes. They knew how to grow food. These freed people were coming to a new land. They did not know about the mosquitoes. They did not know about the land. They did not know how to build. They came to a strange place. Although we say, oh, they were from there originally, they were not the same people. So these people also came to a strange place. They also had to battle. So whether, as Samuel said, they took the land or not, that is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when they were writing letters back to their friends, they were saying to them, there's land here. Please come and join us. And as we say, there are some people who returned because life was very hard, and some people might say that, oh, the settlers should have learned from the indigenous people and the indigenous people should have learned from the settlers. I am sure that took place. What I'm saying is that we don't have all of the letters. The letters that we have mostly are from settlers who were trying to do what the American Colonization Society has sent them to do. Christianize the savages. That's their phrase. Christianize the savages. But there were also people who worked with the indigenous people and learned from them as well, and then took some of their children to teach them as well. As you see, this lady talked about teaching the young men and the young woman how to sew. And she said that indigenous people said they know book. So I'm not saying that I'm not here to pass judgment. What I'm saying is that when you read historical letters or you read personal letters, they tell you about what is going on. We know from Elias writing to his friends and to the American Colonization Society that he's saying people can grow food here. that Bassa has the richest soil he has ever seen. And he listed all of the things that they were growing in Bassa. But we know that in Bassa, they were not growing rice and cotton. He said they were not growing it as much. My thing is saying, I'm saying, oh, maybe it's because the freed people when they came, they said we're not growing cotton anymore, and we're not growing rice anymore because we grew it in Carolinas. That could be. I don't know. That's just my thinking, and I'm not saying that I am right. But what I'm saying, Samuel, is that let us tell a story. We always say that your face is a text and your experiences mark your face. And so people read your face as a text. So what I'm saying is the literary writings of that time, especially the letters, right? People were not lying. People write books and they fudge the truth. These letters were going there and people were very blunt in the letters. You saw the woman who said, well, I'll stay here. But if things are bad, I'll go. I don't have to be here. So we're saying that the letters were really unadulterated truth that people were writing back home. And so from these letters, we are getting the glimpses. We're getting the fact that people are saying, oh, these Liberian people, they like to dress. They were so fashionable. We know that, oh, this other lady, Mrs. Riggs, she visited the Queen and she got a letter back from the Queen. We know that. So what we're saying is that we're learning from these letters what was taking place at the time. We're learning that that one British man named Lawrence, he was making the crew people or the people of Fishtown to fight the settlers because he's saying that if you do that, I will bring my prices down and Britain and France will leave Liberia and they'll be undefended, right? But luckily, or what, Liberia prevailed. So what we're saying is that the letters of a nation, and even with Albert Port's letter, with the letter of Major declaring Liberia as a free country, and he is a free man in a free country. We're saying that all of these letters, are texts that are important to the country, whether it's indigenous or whether it's freed slaves, freed people, is still important to the country. And I think it will behoove us when we decide to have a larger museum to have some of these letters in it to see that wherever you came from, there was struggle, and and people prevailed. We have Liberia, so of course people prevailed. Liberia was not taken over by some foreign country. This little 43,000 acres, they fought and they prevailed. So what we're saying is that the letters of a nation, and in this case of Liberia, shows a lot of heartache, a lot of hope, a lot of despair, a lot of struggle, but they make up the nation. And that's what we're saying here. Yeah. Do we have all the letters are the Todman letters are in on Happy Trust. And then we have some letters. There's a book called Slaves No More, and they have a lot of the letters in it. I I think it's a dissertation here of a book of some of the letters, and they talk mainly of the women and the women and how the women really took part in. I can send you I will look for them and send you the list, or I will put it on Focus on Liberia, and then you can find it. So Samuel says Nigeria and Ghana have pieced together the history of the ancestors from oral traditions and not so much from colonial documents left in slave ports. Do you think Liberia should do the same? Definitely. We talked about this when we started to talk about the phases of Liberian literature. We said that the first phase is the oral phase, where the people migrated from the empires, the Songhay Mali empires that disintegrated, and they moved towards the coast. And they brought with them folk tales. They brought with them proverbs, stories, myth, and legend. I think Jangaba Johnson wrote a book about that, about the griots, about the oral history of Liberia. So we do have that. What we're saying is that you're right. There is a need, for the literature, for the orature, as we call it, oral literature, the orature, to be able to have these things put into a museum. Ghana, of course, Ghana has really done this really well. But Samuel, what we're saying is that there is a need for Liberia as well to do this. We need to be able, even when we talk about diaries, diaries that people kept, letters that people wrote to their friends during the war. People were in refugee camps writing their friends about the heartache that they were going through, the suffering. Those are letters that should be in museums. They should be there. They should serve as a warning. They should serve as a way to gather strength, and they should serve as a way to force the nation forward. So I agree with you, Samuel. Yeah. Yeah, S. Jangaba Johnson is his name, and I think he wrote one on the oral literature. Uh, Ga- Galakpai Colley said freedom of speech was abused by many of those leaders, my dear sister. Oh, definitely, definitely. There were. I mean, we know that. I think he was really the people's president. Nowadays, you can easily get the president. Oh, Doris Smith. Yeah, well, I agree. I'm just saying that I was amazed at the amount of letters. I mean, people wrote him for everything. And it could be, as you say, that he was the people's president. And nowadays, you couldn't just write the president and get something. And that's good. I'm just, I'm just astonished at how so many letters. My child is sick. I want to go upriver. I want this. My house, I need my rent. My daughter is at school. My son is in boarding school. My daughter is in England. I mean, they wrote him for everything. And what I'm saying is that you're right. He may have been the people's president. But what I'm saying is that I just felt that to be a president and deal with so many requests, it was a lot. It was a lot. Yeah. So I wanted to give Samuel uh, the title of the book, if I can, because we did discuss that before. The writings of Jagaba Johnson. So he wrote a lot of Samuel. He wrote about the traditional history and folklore of the Gola tribe in Liberia. And then he wrote about the influence of the Islam on Poro and Sandy society. He wrote about the warrior King Sauboso, the traditions, history, and folklore of the Bella tribe, the tradition and folklore of the we have that of the Bella tribe and King Sauboso, chips from the African story tree, the influence of Islam on Poro and Sandy, the traditional history and folklore of the Gola tribe in Liberia. So S. Jangaba Johnson wrote a lot about the folklore. If you would like to find those books, yeah. And like I said, that it's we have to elevate traditional history as well. But don't forget, Liberia is made up of two different groups coming together. So both histories have to be elevated. Yeah. So I would like to thank you for joining us today. We will discuss more letters. What we're trying to do now is to have a book club. I don't know if you saw on CNN that there are a lot of African countries now, because of the COVID. They're so a lady in Nigeria, I think she has a book club, and then people in Britain, they're reading the book, and then people in Belgium, and then they are getting together and discussing the book. So we will give maybe 4 books, and then you guys can tell us which one you would like for us to read, and then we will have a more interactive discussion. I think that would be very good, instead of us sitting and just talking to you. I mean, this is interactive, but I think that would be much more fun, and we could have some of you on, and then 4 or 5 of us can discuss the book. I think that would be very good. So I thank you for joining us today, for joining me today. I want you to please keep Prof. Nagbe in your prayers. He's not feeling well. As you leave today, say a prayer for him, and we will see you next week. And don't forget, as we always say, whether you are a free person coming, writing letters, whether they met you here, whether you came during the Mali and Songhay disintegration, we are all Liberians, and we should move the country forward. Thank you.
We are Labira. Labira is our home. Labira people. Is everyone. Liberian.